A young woman sits on the edge of her bed, staring at an old message thread on her phone. The screen glows dimly in the early morning light, each word a ghost familiar, but unreachable. The last message was sent months ago. There was no dramatic goodbye, no tragedy, just silence that grew into absence. The person is still alive, somewhere, but they are gone. And somehow, impossibly, it feels like part of her body has been removed, like a limb that still aches after it's no longer there. She clutches the phone, but what she's really holding is a fracture in time, a rift between connection and its sudden, invisible disappearance. Why does this feel so physical? Why does longing not stay politely in the mind, but instead tighten, the chest hollow, the stomach, and echo in the bones? Why, when we miss someone, does it not feel like a memory but like an injury? This question, so intimate, so quietly universal, sits at the intersection of emotion and biology. Why do we miss people? Not just emotionally, but physically, neurologically, as if their absence rearranges the architecture of our bodies. From a purely survivalist point of view, the experience of grief, longing, or missing someone seems counterproductive. Emotional pain consumes energy, it distracts us, it reduces our performance, clouds our judgment, and weakens our resilience. In evolutionary terms, it makes little sense. If nature's engine is efficiency, why would it design a system that lets heartbreak endure long after someone is gone? But this is where science begins to reveal a hidden logic. MRI studies have shown that the same brain regions that process physical pain, the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula, also activate when we experience social loss. That sense of being torn apart after a breakup, or the dull ache of homesickness, is not poetic metaphor, it is neural fact. The brain treats social separation as if the body itself were injured. In moments of missing, our nervous system is not simply recalling the past. It is reacting to a rupture in what it believes is essential for survival, connection. The same systems that evolved to protect us from harm, like pain receptors warning of a cut or burn, have been repurposed to signal something even more fragile: emotional separation. In other words, our relationships are part of our biology. When they vanish, we don't just feel sad, we feel wounded. This reframes the entire experience of missing someone. It's not just memory reactivating an emotional echo. It's the nervous system signaling a loss of regulation, safety, and social coherence. Because for millions of years, being alone wasn't just sad, it was dangerous. Loneliness meant vulnerability. Separation meant threat. Our ancestors didn't survive alone. They survived in tribes, families, alliances. So our brains evolved to treat isolation not as an inconvenience, but as an emergency, which raises a deeper question. Is longing simply the cost of love? Or is it a design feature, a signal built into our wiring, reminding us just how deeply we're shaped by those we hold close? When we miss someone, what we're really sensing may be something far more ancient and profound. The nervous system's record of togetherness, suddenly and in that space where connection once lived, we feel the echo not in thought, but in flesh. To understand why we miss people so intensely, we have to go back to the very beginning, not just of childhood, but of humanity itself. Humans are one of the most slow-developing, vulnerable mammals on Earth. A newborn cannot walk, feed itself, or survive independently for years. Unlike many species whose young are up and running within minutes of birth, human infants rely on prolonged, intimate care. This evolutionary reality shaped not just our behaviors, but the very architecture of our brains. In order to survive, we had to bond. And so, we evolved what scientists call the attachment system, a network of neural circuits and chemical signals designed to ensure that we seek out, stay close to, and remain emotionally tethered to others. At its core, attachment is a survival mechanism. It's not sentimental. It's not optional, it's biological. The brain rewards closeness through a powerful cocktail of neurochemicals: oxytocin, which fosters trust and emotional safety; dopamine, which reinforces pleasure and motivation; and endogenous opioids, the brain's natural painkillers, released in response to touch, laughter, and shared experience. These chemicals don't just make us feel good, they create a kind of internal balance, a physiological sense of rightness when we are with those we're bonded to. But like any system built on reinforcement, the absence of those rewards creates disruption. When bonds are broken, whether by distance, silence, or death, the same systems that once gave comfort now generate craving. The body enters a kind of withdrawal. Missing someone isn't just an emotional ache. It's a neurological reaction to the loss of co-regulation. You feel off, not because you're weak or overly sensitive, but because your nervous system is missing its counterpoint. What we call longing is, in many ways, a biochemical hunger for relational safety. This matters now more than ever. In a world flooded with digital communication, we are more superficially connected than at any point in history, and yet, paradoxically, many of us feel more emotionally distant. A message read but unanswered, a video call that replaces a hug, the flicker of presence without the full weight of being together. These digital forms of contact keep the illusion of closeness alive, but they rarely provide the embodied, synchronized interaction that attachment systems rely on. The result: a growing epidemic of ambiguous loss, where the person isn't fully gone, but they're no longer fully present. The COVID-19 pandemic magnified this rupture. Around the globe, people were suddenly severed from loved ones, isolated by lockdowns, illness, or grief. For months and even years, connection became a memory, a longing, a need deferred. The neuroscience of attachment was pushed into the spotlight as doctors, psychologists, and researchers observed a rise in what they called separation distress. Elevated stress hormones, disrupted sleep, increased anxiety, even heart irregularities. Missing people wasn't just emotionally difficult, it was physically destabilizing, and the stakes are high. Studies now show that chronic loneliness increases the risk of early mortality more than obesity or smoking. It compromises the immune system, accelerates cognitive decline, and raises the risk of depression and cardiovascular disease. Our biology, finely tuned over millions of years for tribe and touch, cannot simply adapt to separation without cost. We evolved not to be islands, but to exist in relational ecosystems. When that system is disrupted, when someone vanishes from the fabric of your everyday life, the brain interprets it as a threat, and the body responds accordingly. So when you miss someone, it's not just nostalgia, it's not weakness, it's your nervous system responding to the absence of something it was built to depend on. It's a signal, not a flaw. And in today's increasingly fragmented world, that signal is no longer rare. It has become a kind of shared human condition, quiet, invisible, and everywhere. In 2011, a team of researchers at UCLA made a discovery that would quietly revolutionize the way we understand emotional pain. Using functional MRI scans, they found that when participants experienced social rejection, being excluded from a group or ignored by someone they cared about, the same region of the brain that processes physical pain lit up with activity. Specifically, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, a region deeply involved in the experience of bodily suffering, became active during emotional distress. The implication was profound. Being emotionally hurt is not metaphor, it is not imagined, it is not symbolic, it is real pain, encoded in the same neural pathways as a broken bone or a burn. The body does not distinguish between a severed limb and a severed connection. The suffering is equally valid, equally embodied, and this connection between emotional and physical pain goes deeper than we once imagined. Subsequent studies revealed that people with strong, consistent social bonds show better health across nearly every metric: lower blood pressure, more stable cortisol levels, better sleep, and reduced inflammation. Their immune systems function more effectively. Their recovery from illness is faster. Their lifespans, statistically, are longer. In contrast, individuals who are isolated or who experience prolonged separation from those they love show a cascade of destabilizing effects. Inflammatory markers rise. Sleep becomes fragmented. Cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, loses its rhythm and remains elevated. The stress of separation is not psychological. It is chemical, measurable, lethal over time, which leads us to a dilemma that seems impossible on the surface. If the pain of missing someone is so biologically intense, so costly to our bodies and minds, why has evolution allowed it to persist? Why would a system that claims to favor survival give us something that feels like it's tearing us apart from the inside? The answer, paradoxically, may be hidden within the pain itself. Missing someone hurts precisely because connection is so essential. Because our brains and bodies evolved under the assumption that closeness, not solitude, was the norm. The pain doesn't reflect a flaw in design, it reflects the design itself. The agony of absence is the proof of how much presence matters. In the same way hunger tells us to seek food and thirst warns us to seek water, longing tells us to seek each other. The pain is a signal, evolved to remind us of what we need most. It's easy to assume evolution weeds out weakness, but sometimes evolution preserves pain not because pain is efficient, but because it protects what matters. To miss someone is to feel the shape they once occupied in your nervous system. It's to register, in vivid, biological terms, the rupture of a bond your brain considered necessary for safety, regulation, even survival. So while longing may feel like suffering, it is also a revelation. It reveals something foundational about who we are, not just emotionally, but structurally, neurologically. We were never meant to exist alone, and the pain of separation, far from being a failure of resilience, is evidence of just how deeply we are built for togetherness. History has always whispered clues about the weight of longing, though science is only now beginning to understand its full force. During World War I, military doctors documented cases of nostalgia attacks so severe they mimicked the symptoms of shell shock. Soldiers, sometimes miles from the front lines, collapsed, with chest pains, shortness of breath, trembling, and dissociation. But it wasn't the bombs or the blood, it was homesickness. The ache for family, for familiarity, for touch and voice and place, became an internal war of its own. The separation was so profound that the body treated it as trauma. Centuries earlier, during the Black Death, chroniclers wrote of grief so intense that it broke the boundary between mind and body. Some mourners experienced seizures, hallucinations, even temporary blindness. They didn't just feel sad, they unraveled. These stories weren't metaphorical, they were physiological collapses triggered by overwhelming absence. Even before neuroscience, people understood that to lose someone wasn't just to grieve them, was to lose something of oneself. Today, neuroscience is catching up to what poetry and pain have long known. Antonio Damasio, a pioneer in the study of emotion and consciousness, once said, "We are not thinking beings who feel, we are feeling beings who think." His work helped overturn centuries of belief that emotion was secondary to reason. In truth, emotion is foundational and organizing principle of consciousness itself, and longing, as one of the deepest emotional experiences we have, is not just a mood. It is a form of embodied memory. When we form close relationships, our brains build internal models of the other person, neural maps that simulate their voice, their rhythms, their responses. These models don't disappear when the person does. Instead, they linger. They live in our mirror neurons, firing when we recall a touch, replay a conversation, imagine what they might say. The brain continues to simulate presence, even in absence. Missing someone, then, is not a passive feeling. It's an active neurological rehearsal of relationship. But this biological truth runs up against social norms that have long punished emotional need. In many cultures, especially Western ones, independence is prized above all. Needing others, especially to visibly, is seen as a weakness, something to be outgrown or hidden. Men, in particular, are often taught to suppress longing, to avoid emotional vulnerability in the name of strength. Yet this suppression doesn't erase pain. It delays it, buries it deeper, and over time, it can calcify into depression, disconnection, and isolation. There is a cultural tension here. On one hand, modern society idolizes the self-sufficient individual, the stoic, the unshakable, the emotionally untethered. But our biology tells a different story. Humans are not rugged islands of autonomy. We are built for mutual regulation, for mirrored responses, for shared emotional rhythms. The nervous system thrives in relationship. The psyche finds balance through connection. Longing, then, is not dysfunction. It's a signal that our core systems are doing exactly what they were designed to do. And yet, when we miss someone deeply, we often interpret it as failure. We feel weak, needy, broken. We question our maturity, our independence. But what if the opposite is true? What if missing someone truly and deeply is a mark of cognitive and emotional maturity? A sign that we have loved in a way that rewired our nervous system? What if longing is not the residue of weakness, but the footprint of real connection? To miss someone is to carry them within us, to let our biology reflect the presence they once held in our lives. It is not a glitch in the human condition. It is the human condition revealing just how porous, interwoven, and exquisitely relational we truly are. The real revelation about missing someone is that it's not simply about their absence. It's not about a name missing from your phone, screen, or a voice no longer heard in your home. It's about you, the version of you that adapted to their presence, the habits that formed around their needs, the emotions you regulated together, the micro-adjustments you made without even knowing. Missing someone is the body searching for coherence after losing a part of its pattern. It's your nervous system, reaching for signals it once used to feel stable, safe, and seen. Recent fMRI research offers a stunning insight into why this experience feels so disorienting. Studies now show that people in deep, long-term emotional relationships develop what scientists call shared emotional skimmers, blended neural networks that don't just recognize the other person, but incorporate them into the structure of self. Your brain doesn't just store memories of someone you love, it partially builds you with them inside of it. From the way you respond to stress, to how you make decisions, even to how your body anticipates touch or comfort their presence, helps shape your reality. And so, when they're gone, it's not just their side of the relationship that disappears. Your side loses shape too. This is why the pain of missing someone can feel like an existential disorientation. The world looks the same, but something in you is no longer calibrated. The emotional maps don't make sense anymore. Your nervous system is doing what it's supposed, seeking reconnection, coherence, regulation, but the input it needs no longer arrives. That confusion, that yearning, is not weakness. It's your biology trying to reorient after the loss of a co-constructed world. And so the core realization emerges. We don't miss people because we're emotionally broken. We miss them because we're neurobiologically built to remember them, not just with thought, but with our entire nervous system. The brain does not treat love and presence as optional extras. It weaves them into our sense of stability, identity, and safety. Longing, then, is not an error, it's evidence. It proves that the connection mattered, so much so that your brain changed to make space for it. This longing is not a sign of emotional failure. It's a biological feature. It keeps love alive across time and space. It motivates reunion. It preserves community. It ensures that even in absence, the bonds we form continue to shape us, protect us, and connect us. It means that love isn't erased by distance. It's written into the brain's architecture. To miss someone is to be human at the deepest level. It's not a flaw in the system, it is the system. And even in pain, it's a profound testament to how deeply we are designed to belong to each other. Today, neuroscience and psychology are finally converging to affirm something deeply human, that our relationships are not just emotionally significant, they are biologically formative. Attachment theory, once a psychological framework rooted in early childhood observations, has merged with modern brain science to reveal how deeply relationships shape us. Functional imaging and longitudinal studies now show that close bonds actively reshape brain circuits involved in emotion regulation, memory, self-perception, and even physical health. When we attach to someone, we're not just feeling emotionally close, we're building neural architecture together. And when we lose them, that architecture doesn't vanish overnight. It lingers, echoing in the circuits that once lit up with their presence. What's most striking is that the pain of separation and longing isn't metaphorical. It engages the same neural systems as hunger and thirst, the hypothalamic and limbic regions associated with survival. The brain treats disconnection as a need not met. It registers absence as deprivation. This reframes longing not as a failure to move on, but as a deeply encoded signal. Asterisk connection is missing, reconnect if you can. Adapt if you must. Asterisk understanding this has given rise to therapeutic breakthroughs. Grief and longing, once treated purely as emotional states, are now seen as somatic, neurological experiences. Expressive writing, narrating the story of loss in journals or letters, can help rewire memory systems by giving the brain a coherent narrative. Mirror therapy, used originally for phantom limb pain, is now being explored to help people reconcile the embodied absence of loved ones, particularly after long-term caregiving. Social reconnection, even with new people, helps retrain the same neural circuits that once fired during closeness, allowing the brain to build fresh emotional pathways while preserving the memory of what was. Modern therapeutic modalities have also begun to target the body as much as the mind. EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, helps reprocess traumatic memories, including those of abandonment and loss, by pairing emotional recall with bilateral stimulation, often leading to emotional integration where previously there was fragmentation. Somatic therapy, which focuses on the body's stored memory and autonomic regulation, can help patients gently release the tension that often lingers long after someone is gone. Grief-informed psychotherapy acknowledges that some forms of longing are not meant to disappear, but to evolve so that the relationship remains, but in a new form, internalized and carried with meaning. One of the most promising areas of insight lies in sleep and dreaming. Neuroscientists now understand that REM sleep plays a vital role in reorganizing emotional memories, essentially helping the brain reprocess intense feelings in a less reactive way. Dreams of loved ones, especially those who are gone, are not just sentimental. They may be the brain's way of keeping relational skimmers active while slowly updating them for a world without that person's presence. Sleep, then, becomes not just rest, but an act of emotional editing, quiet kind of healing. Yet perhaps the most hopeful message science offers is this: while the brain is shaped by loss, it is not doomed by it. Neuroplasticity, the brain's lifelong ability to adapt, means we can always grow new connections, form new meaning, and find new forms of emotional safety. The pain of missing someone is not a sign that we're broken or stuck. It is a sign that our brain remembers how to connect, that the circuits are still alive, still reaching, still capable of holding love. In this light, longing becomes not a wound, but a living thread, a sign that the capacity to bond, to feel, to love, and to begin again is still intact. It is the echo of who we were with someone, and the promise that who we are becoming can still hold joy. Even after absence, an old man stands quietly at the edge of his bed, the morning light filtering through the curtains like a memory. In his hands he holds a scarf, a soft, faded thing that once belonged to his wife. He folds it carefully, not out of necessity, but as ritual, a movement practiced so many times it no longer needs thought. As he brings the scarf close, something shifts in his posture. He closes his eyes. Her voice isn't there, not exactly, but her rhythm is woven into the pauses of his breath, the timing of his sighs, the space between his thoughts. She isn't gone in the way the world defines it. She lives in the patterns he still carries, the ones they made together without ever meaning to. To miss someone is not simply to notice their absence. It is to carry the trace of their presence like fingerprints pressed into the clay of your being. It is to walk through the world with a nervous system shaped, in part, by another's laughter, their gaze, the way they once said your name. The ache is not emptiness. It's a sign of what once was full, the imprint of connection, so deep it remade who you are. We often treat the pain of missing as something to solve, to get over. But maybe it isn't a problem. Maybe it's a form of continuity, a quiet, cellular reminder that we were touched, changed, written into by someone else. And in this way, longing becomes sacred, a living thread between what was and what still moves within us, a signal that for a time, two lives truly intertwined, and that their echo still lingers in the spaces where we breathe. In that space of longing, we're reminded of something more than loss. We're reminded that we were never meant to move through life untouched by others. That connection isn't just emotionally, it's biological. It rewires us. It leaves traces in our memory, in our language, in our sleep and our sorrow and our joy. We don't just remember people with our minds. We remember them with our whole bodies. We remember them in how we pause, how we laugh, how we soften when we hear a familiar song. And maybe that's what love really is, not a moment, but a transformation, a remapping of the self around someone else, a quiet, mutual editing of who we are. The science of remembering isn't only found in neurons or brain scans. It's found in the invisible architecture we carry forward, the way someone who once made the world feel whole still lives, silently, in the rhythm of our days. We miss because we loved, and we hurt because we remember. And in that memory, however fragile, there is still connection, there is still life.